Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this month for our Blagile conversation. Today, we are joined with Melissa Daley of Orca Intelligence, who is going to talk about her transition from Scrum Master to CEO. You guys, I'm really excited every single time that Melissa comes. We always have a really good conversation, but I thought it would be helpful for me to start with just a little bit of background about her. So Melissa has over 20 years of experience in IT, and she is the CEO and founder of Orca Intelligence, and that organization started in 2014. I want her to get into the unique purpose of her organization and a little bit more about her journey in a bit, but she's also got a background in systems engineering. She went to the University of Maryland as well. And then she also founded a nonprofit and sold it. So there's tons and tons and tons of rich information that Melissa has in that brilliant brain of hers and just experiences that she always comes and shares with the community. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So as always, you guys know I say this every single month, but this is a space that is for us, right? So you don't have to worry about code switching. You don't have to worry about saying you're saying the right thing or the wrong thing. We don't really care. Our goal, we're happy that you're here. So take your shoes off, sit a little bit, ask a lot of questions because I don't want it to just be us talking. And let's go ahead and get started. All right, Melissa. So tell me a little bit about how you got started in Agile.
Let's see, I think in 2010, I had started my business called Information Technology Gets Better. And I was contracting with an organization called If People in Atlanta, Georgia. And they were very big on Agile. And so, oh no, it wasn't 2010. That was 2008. What am I talking about? 2007, 2008, somewhere around that time frame. And so they were really big on Agile. They actually had a couple of offshore developers in like Argentina. And so they were doing really cool work for like local nonprofits in the Atlanta area. And so as a contractor, they had hired me on as a Scrum Master, pretty much as a kind of like a, back then everyone was kind of mixing Scrum Master and product owner together because it was cheaper. Right. So of course I had the systems engineering side, but then I was also learning how to be a Scrum Master. And so they hired me to do pretty much both. And that's when I kind of just there was no training for me at that time. It was a lot of just kind of hit the ground running because they were a small organization and so was I. So that's how I pretty much got started. And I just learned a lot of tools around just being in the Agile space. So much from there.
So how did you come to start Orca Intelligence?
So when I first had my first business, which was Information Technology Gets Better, the nonprofit, I also had a for-profit business at the same time called IG Associates. So Information Technology Gets Better Associates, which was a for-profit organization that the nonprofit helped nonprofit organizations, primarily youth development organizations, with their information technology. And then the for-profit helped all organizations with their information technology. And so at that time, I was pretty young in my development of the organizations. And so I didn't make good financial decisions, right? And so I was really underbidding myself and really undervaluing myself. And by undervaluing myself, I had no boundaries in what standards I wanted to do, what best practices I wanted to do within my own organization. And so I ended up saying, you know what, I probably should get a job and rethink this. So I didn't close the organizations. I was still doing work and working full time at the same time. But then it got to a point where I kind of just was like, I just got to give up. Something's not right. And so I ended up doing that, giving up pretty much, or reevaluating, taking a step back. And I was really looking forward to being a wife. Like that's what I look forward to being. And so I ended up going down that path. And then when I ended up getting divorced, and actually right before I got divorced, it came to me that I needed to continue with my business idea, but formulate it into one company. And that's when Orca Intelligence came about.
Okay, this is good. There's so much here. I'm gonna dig in. I hope you know that, guys. And so
come on, Wendy, come on.
Melissa and I have gotten to know each other really well. In working together in the Blagile community, in the Blagile space. So there's a lot here that I want to dig into, because I think this is my opinion. You know, there are so many people out here in the world who are using their platforms to say, quit your job, become an entrepreneur. This is the thing to do. And no one's really talking about their failures, right? No one's talking about when it doesn't work. No one's talking about how, the choices, the personal choices that, you know, entrepreneurs are making on a daily basis. Do I go down this path or do I go down this path? So I want to dig into this. I want to talk a lot about it, right? Because this is the seeds of this conversation. So how what you said landed on me is that you had gotten your start, you know, we talked about how you were utilizing Agile, and you started to go down the path of Scrum. We talked about a little bit of your life experience, right? And you felt like you essentially, I'm going to paraphrase, it's the way it landed on me, had to put your dreams to a certain degree on hold in order to get married, right? And to go down that path. And then through the disruption of that marriage, you know, kind of like this rethinking about yourself, your life, how you wanted to serve, the talents that made you uniquely you led you to the path of saying, well, wait a minute, this dream and this thing that I had put on the back burner, maybe it's time for me to actually spend some time developing this and digging into this and leading from this space versus, you know, trying to go down the path that I think society often tells us, you know, is the right path for everyone. And that might not necessarily be the case, right?
Mm-hmm. So this is what I realized when I got married. I was like, and then quickly thereafter got divorced. I realized that if I'm going to take a risk and put money into something where I could not be as successful long term at it, then why not bet on myself to do the same thing, right? And then use the same financial backing, right? Because everybody's like, oh, you know, I want to spend this much money on a wedding. I want to, you know, do all this, buy a house, da 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 da. And granted, like I love my real estate, so don't get me wrong on that. But in terms of like really betting on myself, that was the main thing. Is because I used to think that I needed a stability, like I needed a partner to at least sustain me with healthcare and all of that. Now, not to say that I didn't love my partner, but it was like, can I at least get some stability at home so I didn't have to worry about being on contracts and not having that stability, that consistency. And I used to think that I couldn't do it by myself. And so I ended up, after I quickly, you know, got divorced and that marriage ended, I was like, well, if I'm going to lose all what I lost, I might as well try this in my business, like really go in. Like before, I went in, but I didn't really go in. But this time when I went in strategically. I made a commitment to myself. And so far, this is the longest organization I've ever worked for in my life, right? Because I made that commitment, and that's what it was. It was just like, it's like waking up and saying, you know what, I'm going to commit to this. We are going to go through this. We are going to make sure that we work through whatever needs to be worked through, but we are committed to this. And honestly, I do feel like God has put this organization on my heart for a long time. And it's a service that I have to deliver. Like I have no choice.
There's so much here. One of the things that I often talk about, you know, is that in this space of Agile, especially for us as Blagilists, right? We've grown up in households that have a faith-based context, right? And so many of us in this experience called being Black and brown come from homes that are very much spiritual. And I'm not necessarily going to say like Christian or whatever, because regardless of what country you're in, you know, your faith and your spirituality practice may be different. And so to that end, I feel like a lot of us pull on the servant leadership part of our Agile journeys. And ultimately, I feel like that turns and transforms or translates into ministry, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that you say that God put this on your heart, because I feel like as Blagilists are going out into spaces and places, we are often called to transform, transmute a lot of the environments, a lot of the organizations, a lot of the teams that we have been put in. And so typically, I don't think that people think about it, you know, from a ministry perspective. Well, I know, we know Devon Mitchell does, right? He's like the agile preacher, but it is, right? Because you're actually going out and with your individual talent and with the thing that God put in your heart, like to go and utilize this to transform the organizations that you're in. So I want to dig into that. I want to talk more about, how did you get connected with what you felt like this was, you're saying like your call and this was the direction. How did you tap into knowing that this was your thing?
Like being in a bad relationship.
Say more.
You get the first, you get the pitter pat. Now you get the silent message of, right? It's real soft. And then you go, I don't know if I heard that right. And then you get another message that says, I said leave. And it's not as hard, it's not as harsh, but you kind of like listen to it, you're like, no, that doesn't make sense. And then you get another like hit in the head. And that hit in the head is it's either loud, it's disruptive, it gets your heart palpitating, gets your mind racing. It comes with like where you don't feel as clear anymore, feel nervous and nauseous. And you're like, I gotta do something. And then whatever you do, whatever it is that the Spirit told you to do, all of a sudden it's like clarity. It's like a blood rush of like pure clarity. And then you sit back and you wait in faith of what's going to happen next. But then the other thing is too, is like, for me, writing things down and coming with it. Like, I honestly believe that we're in covenant with God. Like, everything, you're in covenant, right? And so based on that, I have to write down like what it is that I'm in covenant with God with that day, that week, that month, that year. Like, everyone's talking about a vision board, and I'm like, nah, there's a vision, it's a vision roadmap, right? It's not just a board, but it's a roadmap, because you have to, in order to get there, you have to like plan that day. That is a decomposition of the week, that is a decomposition of the month, that is a decomposition of months or quarters and years, right? And then every action you take needs to equate to that goal, that aggregate of whatever goal, whether it's a weekly, monthly, or annual goal. And that is like a message to God by saying, look, this is what we need to get done. If you want me to deliver this, is this what we're supposed to do? And then if there's validation that comes from the universe that says, yeah, you're on the right path. If you don't get the validation, then there's your message. It's just like, for example, if someone says, like when people are like, when someone's interested in you, they call you, they talk to you, right? It's the same thing. When the universe wants you to do something, when God wants you to do something, he calls you to do it. He literally says, "Nah, this is you. Unassuming you. It's for you." And it goes from there.
I love this. This was so good. So just as a reminder, don't forget to ask questions. You can come off mute. You can raise your hand. You can just blurt it out. You can put it in the chat. We're really low key here, so don't feel, that there has to be a lot of pomp and circumstance, because there doesn't. But there are several things, again, weaving these things called breadcrumbs. That's how I refer to it, right? And so you're saying that God, the universe, spirit, whatever you believe in, breadcrumbs you, and you've been getting these breadcrumbs on your journey that being an employee forever just was not for you. And typically, it's funny. I find that the breadcrumbs come a lot. Like you get cake, right? You might get breadcrumbs but during a catastrophe, when God is ready to disrupt your life, he'd be like, okay, I'm gonna give you a whole slice of cake today. And it always seems to happen in the most inconvenient time, right?
Yeah.
So you got your slice of cake that said, it is time for you to move. And I love the fact that we're bringing the whole concept of like spirituality into this conversation. Oftentimes, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like the Lord speaks to me through hip hop. I think that God is one of the like best.
Tupac is Tupac, you think?
No, this one is the old Patriot Saint Ludacris, the one that I'm about.
Oh, okay.
I'm about to quote. I'm about to quote from the Patriot Saint Ludacris. So the old Patriot Saint Ludacris has a song that speaks to me like old Negro spirituals. I'm getting laughed at in the chat. It's okay. It's okay. What I'm about to say is going to make sense. And so y'all may have heard one of these old, hip hop Negro spirituals, but the name of the song that we all know is "When I Move, You Move," just like that. So I feel like God speaks to me through that song, because oftentimes the Lord is saying, when I move, you move.
Correct.
Just like that, right? And so it's not the other way around. Like when I move, when April moves, when Melissa moves, then the Lord moves. That's not how any of this works. Like, and so the thing is that we have to be present and paying attention to how things are moving in our life, whatever you believe, whatever your spiritual practice is. And so I think it's important. I think it's important for us. And as we're talking about this journey, I think that what you're saying, this transition from Scrum Master to CEO, has been a lot of you staying present to the things that were happening in your life, and you focusing on how God was moving you, how you were seeing what was in you needed to come alive in terms of how you would continue to be a servant leader in other spaces by leading from the seat of CEO, and then also pouring into those people that you hired, right? To be able to carry out and orchestrate the vision that you have for yourself. Chase just said, I thought that song was about something else. I mean, there's a lot of songs that are about a lot of things, but I'm just saying that God speaks to me through that song. And so whenever I know it's time to make a decision, in my mind, I hear Ludacris. Y'all will never look at Ludacris the same way. Now he's officially the patron saint of Ludacris.
I'm a believer. I'm a believer now.
at least in the house of Blagilists, as for us, like, we will serve the hip hop Jesus. So anyway, I thank you for that. I love that your path came through listening. So I think that was the first thing that I would say that has come through, is making certain that you are present on the journey and listening, right? Because sometimes we want things. We might want a job change. We might not want to be a Scrum Master. We might want to be a CEO, but the oil might not be on us being a CEO, right? And to your point about going back to get a job, that was also pivotal to this, because sometimes we need to stay in the soil that we're in before we get promoted somewhere else, right? Because there were things that you needed to get in that experience of when you went back, right? You tried, the oil wasn't on it. You came back, you learned the stuff working in somebody else's organization. You built your bank account a little bit more, right? You solved those things that were in you that you were worried about in terms of like having stability, having consistency. And so you were able to build a bank, if you will, that helped you make that transition a lot smoother and a lot easier, right? So I think all of those things are really important. Then the other thing that I heard you say, in addition to gaining clarity and also paying attention, was having faith that the next steps were going to be provided to you. And I know personally that's hard, right?
Yeah, it's hard as hell.
It is hard, especially as you want more, you want to do more, you want to be more, you want to have more. And you like, all right, I'm waiting, I'm waiting for my next step. But you weren't just waiting aimlessly, right? It sounded like, we all hear it. I bring these adages in, but plan the work and work the plan, right? That's something that we've heard so many times, especially folks like me who come from the project management discipline, right? But you literally said, to hell with a vision board, like, this is my life. I don't need a board. I need a roadmap for how I'm going to do this. If I'm going to be successful, I'm going to write the things down and make it plain. And then I'm going to deconstruct that plan and actually make actionable steps that are in alignment with the vision that I have. You look like you want to say something, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's an engineering thing. Like, I'm an engineer, so I have to that's how my brain works, to look at the big picture and then break it down, then build it back up again, right? And so, but even in that plan, there's things that shift, like every plan, it's like you plan and then the gods laugh, But it doesn't mean when they laugh that you're not on the right path. It just means like, you wanted that perfection. That's not how this works. Like, how it works is you have to go through whatever speed bumps in order to get you down to the right road, right? Because it wasn't like, oh yeah, I got divorced and then I created a business and all things were all peachy and gold. No, it was hard, especially being a Black female in IT. I had to struggle to get paid what I was worth. I had to struggle to get the contracts. I had to compete. I still compete, right? Compete hard to get the work that's necessary, and to get what I'm valued, right? And then to also, bring on the right team to make sure that there's people that are supporting us all, and that we have clients that are supporting us, and we have the clients that are going to be sustainable long term. Like, there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot of weight that I feel like I carry all the time. But I kind of get used to it. You kind of, how you get used to a comfortable pair of shoes, you just kind of get used to it. And you're like, okay, that's a part of the process. But then there's days where you're like, there's another level now that I have to learn. And that's where my impatience comes in. It's like, oh my God, I gotta learn something else now. Oh. And so it gets scary. But then as I go through that kind of like temper tantrum on the floor, after about a good, 6 weeks of that, then it's like, oh, that's right. I have to believe that this is my journey and destiny and blah, 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 So at least that's how it works for me.
I love this. Crystal says, preach. So we were talking about the struggles where she had made that comment. I want to talk about that because I want to dig in. Tell us a little bit about some of the struggles that you've encountered, and bigger than that, how you've overcome them.
So the struggles are, they're impetus to make me grind. A lot of the struggles make me angry. Okay. And so I put that in my work. Like, I literally like go at it. Like, I'm like, oh, I got to create something. What am I about to create? Like, for example, in 2020, when 2020 happened, it was like a catch-22. It was parts of 2020 that was absolutely wonderful for me because I'm more of an introvert, right? So I'm like, bet, stay home, everybody? Oh, I'm good. Like, oh, this is excellent, right? But then there was the aspect of, because of that, the dynamics of some of my contracts shifted. And so I had to reorganize the way that I looked at new clients and current clients and so forth. So I had to do real deep strategic planning for like 9 months, right? And in those 9 months, I had this fire in my belly that was so strong. I didn't think my work ethic was like like my work ethic is great, but like those 9 months, it turned my work ethic into a beast where I developed a brand new software. I made a whole bunch of new contacts and new contracts and new this and that, and da, 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 da. And I had a whole new mental state because of that. Because if I didn't go through that rough patch in 2020, even 2019 was off because I went through a really bad relationship ending then, and which was basically like a second divorce pretty much. But all of those, if I didn't go through all of that, that mental toughness that occurs, that would have never happened. And so, like, again, I will go on the floor and have a temper tantrum, and I'll be like, well, what is this? What is this, God? You don't even exist. What the heck is going on? You know, have all these like passionate discussions and crying profusely or whatever. But then as I let it move through me, then and go on the other side of it, it's like, oh, I need that mental toughness to like get me to do what I need to do. And a part of that was I kept waiting on this perfect moment. I was like, no, I gotta wait until I had this amount of money. No, I have to wait until I have this person. No, I have to wait. Da, 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 da. So I kept waiting in my mind for this perfect moment. And then what happened was, you know what? There is no perfect moment. And what God does for me is that he ends up putting me in situations where he knows the fire is going to be lit underneath my butt. And then that's how I'm going to work. Because otherwise I'd be like, oh, we good, God, let's coast. Like, this is perfect. Life is great. And then all of a sudden something happens. I'm like, motherfucker. I'm like, wait, what just happened? You know? And then I end up being like, all right, we got to fight through this. Like, we have to fight it. Like this, you stand strong. I encourage myself. I know who my ancestors are. I know who my parents are, my family. I stand firm on those foundations, right? And by standing firm on that foundation, I'm able to proceed and propel myself forward. So
I love so much about this. And Crystal just said that she too, you know, she just had a rant, right? And no, we full on fall out, you know, fall out on the floor, kicking and screaming like little kids.
I actually think we need to have a rant day. Like, we need to have a place where you go and because kids do it all the time. I'm like, why did we have to grow out of it? For what? Because it's inappropriate? I do that right in my bedroom.
Right. One of the things that I've started doing, and I offer this for any help, is that I time my temper tantrums for the things that, you know, whatever. You had a bad date, you know, your mate made you mad, like whatever. Your kids, you know, peed on the floor, for those of us who are potty training. These are real life facts, y'all. Like, whatever, you broke your heel, you know, whatever the thing is, somebody, you know, called you out your name at work, you didn't get a promotion, like whatever. But typically I will give myself a time limit. Usually my time limit is 5 minutes. On things that are bigger, I'll allow myself a couple of hours, right? Which is a large energy expenditure to be mad. But sometimes you need to feel, to Crystal's point, to Melissa's point, you need to feel what's going on with you, right? Because that's how a whole lot of disease comes up, right? That we don't think about it. Like, disease is literally like disease. So feel the discomfort. And then set your alarm, and when the timer is done, then it's done. Be done with it. And
see, I'm less controlled. Like, mine is, I let it flow. It could be 3 years.
Oh, that's it.
I let that shit flow. I let it flow. And people be like, what's the use to? Yes, I'm gonna wait until the residue is like gone, shaved off, whatever. It's just still there. And I just let it flow. I don't tell it when to leave. I just be like, all right, okay, I guess this is where we are. And the thing is like, through that evolution and through that process of just letting it be, for me at least, and the way that I work it, it's like I start to learn and I start to see the details, the minutia of what my behavior is in that process. right? So it's like, I look and I'm like, oh, I did that. Ooh. Because when I think about why I got to the temper tantrum, it could be because I had these high expectations. Okay, wait, all right, let's lower that. And then the temper tantrum may come back again. I'm like, oh wait, it's the expectations. Let me, right? So I'm able to correct myself however it is that it evolves. Like I just let it process, so I'm able to rearrange and then teach myself something new as I go through that process.
I love this. I love this. This is so good. The comments, folks are saying that it's good for them too. I know we're coming up to the second half an hour. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to keep saying it. Please put them in the chat or just come off mute. There's a couple of things that like, I feel like we're going off a little bit, but I feel like it's all good. So just to kind of like weave things together, one of the things that I also heard you say that I believe in terms of your transition from Scrum Master to CEO was really, really helpful is that we go through experiences and sometimes we don't know why we go through the experience, right? And I'm thinking about you up leveling, you know, as you talked about, like, I was angry but I, you know, with the pandemic, I didn't understand, but I needed those 9 months because those 9 months unlocked basically like a new level. You know, remember when we used to play Mario Brothers? I got this image of like you, like, and you got bigger or whatever, you got another life, whatever. So, you know, you needed to up level, and that turned like your gangster up a lot more, right? Yeah. You needed that in order to become who you are in the now that we see, to be able to go after the things that you know are yours, to be able to stand firmly in saying, no, this is the rate, you know, and if you're unhappy with or unable to pay that rate, that's fine. And being able to walk away from the things that don't serve you. And so even as an executive of your own organization, those things that we hear about, you still need to have those competencies and that grit, if you will, to be able to do that as well. The other thing that I also heard you say, which I thought was very important, was about not waiting on the perfect moment. And so as you think about how you've transitioned from, you know, individual contributor to becoming a CEO, I feel like there's probably been a lot of times when you were pushed before you were ready, or the moment wasn't perfect, you know, where you had to just go in and do what needed to be done. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Gosh, which should I pick? I would say even when I started, like, it wasn't a perfect moment. It's not like I had like globs of savings to say, oh yeah, this is a great time for me to start. It was literally like, I had started my business plan the year before in 2013. I was going through a divorce in 2013. And I registered, as soon as we got separated, I registered my business. And then the year later,
shade. But I respect it. I respect it.
And I ended up waiting another year at the company that I was working for, and I was learning a little bit more of like, oh, can I be a government contractor with them, and how this all works? So part of my business plan was kind of like going through government contracting. So the year after that, in 2014, April 30th was my last day, and I started May 1st at Orca Intelligence in 2014, and I literally did not know what project I'd be working on. I had no clue. I was just like, okay, I can search for something. I have a bomb resume. I'm good at what I do. I believe in myself. Let's make it happen. And so I ended up finding something to start as a contractor in my business, corp to corp, and then started building my past performance, and then met people there who referred me to other projects friends from the past. So it was not a perfect situation at all. Like I had totally miscalculated my business plan. Like that was just totally miscalculated. But I wasn't, the one thing that I told myself was those lessons that I learned from my prior businesses, I'm not taking those in there. Because the main thing I really learned was to keep me or to help me from having any hurdles really like hurt or puncture me too much. I had to have boundaries and standards. And as long as I have boundaries and standards, I'm good. And so now I do. Like I don't work after, a certain amount of time unless I really, really have to. But on average, I'm getting my 7 hours of sleep, like on average. Now there's some nights like yesterday, which was really weird, but before I was like working like a dog till 2 o'clock in the morning and getting up at 6, and there was no boundaries. I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to lose. And now there's this mentality of, okay, that fear does creep up. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's never there. It creeps up, but now I can manage it and say, but look, Melissa, you have validation. Like, look at all the work you've been able to produce in 8 years. Da, 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 da. And so, and the team that's being built, like this is awesome. So I have that validation now instead of looking at it from trying to devalue myself because I didn't understand the worth back then. So
that is so good. And I think, sometimes we as Blagilists, because we've been in corporate environments, right, where managers, peers, senior leaders, whatever, either directly or covertly attempt to make us feel like we should be happy to have an opportunity, us actually seeing our worth and being comfortable with standing firm on it is challenging. And we don't go for the things that we want. We don't ask for the things that we need. We don't set up boundaries like, that are intended to keep us safe, right? That's the reason why we have them, because the boundary is for us. The boundary is not for other people. The boundary is for us to remind us of who we are, why we are, what we value, what's important to us, what are our non-negotiables. And so you saying like you had to address that within yourself as you started to go out and look for new clients and look for new opportunities. And that feels like it's actually been transformative for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, part of that is like, I've said this to other people. Some people may call this crazy, but I see myself as self-governing, right? And what I mean is like a self-governing body, an autonomous person, and like an organization that is autonomous. And by doing that, like I have my treasury, let's say, I have my my Senate, right? My council, and we all make decisions, right? And so that could be me reaching out to friends, reaching out to mentors, reaching out to coworkers, colleagues, whatever. But the whole point is like, I either look within myself in order to get that and ask God for guidance and so forth, and do a lot of journaling or whatever. But there's also this belief of like, just like the government runs and they need to do stuff to make decisions and rule on how their policies and procedures work, I got the same thing going on. I got policies and procedures on how I personally operate so that the organization can feel safe as much as possible. Because I'm always growing. Everybody's growing. And I make a lot of mistakes. That's the big thing. Because I learn from every mistake I make. I make a lot of mistakes a day. So.
Okay, this was good. I don't want to keep going on. We haven't had any questions that have come up, but I want to ask 2 more questions before we end. So the last one is, anyone who's interested in making the pivot from Scrum Master to CEO, what would you tell them about attracting, finding clients?
Use your network to start and then grow from there, like branch out from there. Because if it wasn't,
what does that mean? What does that mean?
So like, I would say a lot of my work has come from, it's never been because of marketing. It's always because of word of mouth. Like 90% of my work is because of word of mouth.
Okay.
It's not because we got a proposal. It's not because nothing like that. It's always because of someone that I've connected with, who's known me from years before or whatever. And that's just how it's gone. And so that has been very, very helpful for me, is word of mouth. And then sustain those relationships. I will say from my own experience, you know, I can be a little, as many may say, a little quick to make decisions. I'm laughing because my COO was right across from me. and so I can be a little quick to make decisions. So I will say, be patient with yourself, because I'm like, that is like my Achilles heel. Like if there's anything that I can work, it's like being patient with myself and having those expectations and those standards. Because, you know, I like, you know, you want excellence, right? And so having that, like just being patient with getting there. So those are the main things, is because when you start on your own and you start without a partner, you're starting with your expectations, your goals. But then when you start thinking about it, and if God put it on your heart, like the organization is a lot bigger than who you are.
That's so good. That's so good. There's a couple of things I want to mention, and I think we're going to wrap for today. The one thing that's always interesting to me is when folks ask for patience. And since this, I feel like, has been a very spiritual conversation, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, the original disciples like Luda, I think it's important to remember that the way that we get things is through experience. So I'm going to offer this to you as my friend and fellow Blagilist. Be careful what you ask for, because when you ask for patience, God gives you opportunities to practice patience. And those opportunities are typically hard.
Yes.
So if that's what you want, then continue to ask for more difficulty. But I would encourage you to ask for more grace. And so the grace you give is the grace that you get, right? And so,
yeah, that is true.
So I just a little bit of like a catch on language, because life is already hard enough. We don't need to be out here asking for additional opportunities to make it harder. So there's that. So then the last thing that I wanted to just simply say was, if you could leave our Blagilists or anyone else who's in the community with a final thought about your journey, your transition, what would that be?
I have to rep Hampton University because, you know, I got to do that. Yeah, I went to Maryland, but that, whatever. But so that's one thing. But the other thing is that we tend to allow society to define and say, oh my God, they did this to this, you know, person of color, so they're gonna do it to me. Now that, to me, is like a fleeting thought, like it happens, but then when I look past that, the deeper thing, I have to then think about, yes, collectively, we have a lot of disadvantages. We have a lot of setbacks because of color of skin, racism, blah, 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 right? But the less power we give to that, the better we become stronger as a community, the better we become empowered economically as a community, the better and stronger we become in our jobs, as you know, entrepreneurs and so forth. So the less we give the word, the power to those things that are not for us, and we concentrate on those things that are for us, the stronger we become together.
I love that. I love that. I love that. That's such a great way to close out today's conversation. Is, this journey for you has been all about taking your power back. And if you think about it, just kind of like looking at the breadcrumbs, even through the last 40 minutes of the story, right? You realize your power as, as a woman going through divorce, that's hard, because men don't have to change their name, change their driver's license, change anything, like it's the woman who has to go through all of this to a certain degree.
Yeah, I had a prenuptial agreement, so certain things has been.
But whatever, for other women,
But
right?
I understand, yes,
Other women and men, right, who might be in the same situation. I just say this has been about, y'all are kikiing way too much here. This journey has been about, you taking your power back, and like you realizing that you personally are worth it and you have something to give, and you standing on that, and ultimately that became, in this new season, the foundation that Orca Intelligence was built on. Okay, so Lizette has a question. What's up, Lizette?
Hello.
Hi.
See you, Melissa.
You too.
Enjoying this so much. I had a lot of revelation, but one question that I wish April had asked that I'm curious about is about building teams, as you grow and scale your organization. How, because for me, I don't know, because I felt like I was hearing me talk when you were talking. I have a lot of control issue. So building a team that you can trust and that you can in an agile way give them autonomy. If you can share a little bit, how were you able to go about it, and what are the best practices that you had to employ to do that?
Yeah, that's where the patience comes in, but then it's also learning for myself, like how to give clear direction. That's not always easy, because when you have your own brain and you're like, well, I get it, why don't you get it? But then the other part of that is, again, going back to the organization is a lot bigger than you. So asking your team, like, what is it that they want? Like, how do they see themselves in it, right? How do they see how it can grow? Because it's bigger than me. It's like, I have my ideas, but my ideas can be, I'm only one person and I'm small, right? And it's literally and figuratively. And so the idea is to gain your team, like have them have buy-in, get their buy-in so that they're growing the organization. And that control thing, I know I have it too, but that's, again, it's bigger than me. When I created Orca, it's bigger, right? So.
Yeah. Crystal just said the Agile Manifesto, right? Trust your team, that they are self-motivated and get the job done. Thanks for bringing us back to our principles. That's always a good thing, right? Okay, so Lizette, great question. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap for today?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in your case, did servant leadership translate well as a leadership style when you became a CEO, or were there things that you had to kind of unlearn?
Yeah. It's still hard. Like, servant leadership is still a lot difficult for me because I'm such a, like, I'm looking at it myself, right? But I have to, like, when that happens, I have to take some step back and be like, ooh, okay, let me backpedal. And ask, like, is there anything that you need or want, or, is there something I can do to support you? And so all of those aspects so wholeheartedly help a lot. Good question.
Thank you.
Always a great
question. Yeah, that was a great question. The one thing that Melissa probably will never say about herself is that she is probably one of the biggest proponents of servant leadership. Like, that is her heart. That is who she is. And that's what I think too, that at least for me, as I encounter Blagilists from all over the world, it's like here, you know what I'm saying? Like you meet people and they're like, yeah, I believe in the concept of servant leadership, and it's a very much head thing. But I think, and that's why I typically think about it from a faith-based or spiritual context, because that whole idea of service and being of serve, that's at least that's where at least I learned it. And I find that, you know, in many of our homes, right, our homes are the first classrooms that we'll ever know. And that's where I feel like this idea of being of service has come in, like with us volunteering, being out, you know, to whom much is given, much is required, right? Like those are things that I feel like we've learned even as young kids. And now that we've come up in this discipline, that's not, the whole concept of servant leadership is not really new as we draw on other things. But I say, like I said, I say all that to say, I love that question. I love that question from Melissa, because she embodies that in her daily walk of life, like even as a friend. And so I love that. And I love that for her. And I'm hoping that has come through. So that was such a great question. It was such a great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are almost at the bottom of the hour, and so many of us probably didn't have a chance to go get lunch. So hopefully you guys can have a couple of minutes to go and transition, grab some lunch and coffee before your next meeting. Melissa, I just want to say thank you so much for making and taking time to spend with us today. This was just a rich conversation and funny too, and thank you for bringing yourself to this. I'm so grateful to have you here. And for the other Blagilists who joined, thank you so much for spending time. I hope this was good, and I hope you have a great month. And so next month you can join us. May 5th, I believe, is our next conversation. And we're going to be joined by Nakia Henry. She's a career strategist, and we are going to be talking about how you can actually utilize and up-level your Agile job search. So I'm excited to talk about that. So check out the registration details on blagile.com. They'll be posted later on today. And like I said, have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.